Pennsylvania storage unit connected to this case. You can hear an explosion as the bomb squad conducted a controlled detonation to safely remove these devices for further analysis.
Wait, did you hear that? That was a controlled detonation of an actual IED found in a storage unit. This isn't a movie. This is happening right now in New York City and Pennsylvania. You need to see how close this really came to a catastrophe.
Investigators say the homemade bombs Ibrahim Qayyumi and Amir Balat carried to a Saturday anti-Muslim protest in New York City never detonated, but if they had, it would have been catastrophic. Both men appeared in federal court yesterday. The FBI says the suspects made multiple pro-ISIS statements, and one of them expressed a desire to carry out an attack even bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing.
You've got to look at the gravity of what we just saw. These aren't just random homemade devices. These are full-blown IEDs capable of mass casualties. If you pay attention to the details, the suspects were trying to replicate the Boston Marathon tragedy, which is absolutely chilling. It's wild to see how the media originally framed this as just two teenagers having a bad day before they got arrested. Look at the suspect on the right. He just graduated high school last year. It makes you wonder how deep this radicalization actually goes. You can see the intensity in the bomb squad's movements. They knew exactly what they were dealing with. It's a miracle those devices malfunctioned when they did, or the news cycle today would be looking a lot different. We really need to keep our eyes open because these sleeper cells aren't a myth anymore. It's a reminder that the people tasked with our safety are the only things standing between us and total chaos.
At Houston's Hobby Airport, those lines have been snaking out the main terminal, down to the baggage claim, and all the way out to the parking garage. The airport is warning TSA wait times could be 3 hours or more.
We tried to allow a little more than 3 hours to get here.
I've been waiting in line for about 2 hours now.
Got nothing else to do but wait.
The same story at MSY in New Orleans.
It's long.
And at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta. The TSA's funding expired 3 weeks ago after lawmakers failed to reach an agreement on ICE protocols, triggering a partial Homeland Security shutdown. The White House released a statement blaming Democrats for the shutdown and...
Check out those lines. That is Hobby Airport in Houston, and that queue is literally snaking all the way out to the parking garage. Can you imagine showing up 5 hours early and still potentially missing your flight? This is what happens when the funding for the TSA and DHS completely dries up. You see people sitting on their luggage, just waiting in total frustration because the agents aren't even getting paid right now. It's a total mess. Look at the woman in the terminal. She's been there for 2 hours and hasn't even hit the main checkpoint yet. It's a ripple effect that hits every traveler regardless of where you're going. The touchless ID trick I mentioned is basically the only way around this nightmare, but hardly anyone knows it exists yet. If you're flying this month, you better be flexible or you're going to snap like a pencil. It's high-stakes political theater playing out in the most annoying way possible for everyday citizens.
Which we have been 150% clear we are not funding DHS, ICE, and CBP. Not a penny more. Because these are completely lawless agencies. They all have to be dismantled. They are not operating with regard to the rights of people in the United States, whether it's U.S. citizens, legal permanent residents, or people who have been here for a long time and committed absolutely no crime.
This part is actually mind-blowing. Listen to the rhetoric being used here, calling the Department of Homeland Security a lawless agency that needs to be dismantled. Regardless of your politics, imagine the logistics of actually doing that. We're talking about the Coast Guard, FEMA, and cybersecurity all being on the chopping block. It's such a radical shift in how we view national security. When you hear phrases like, not a penny more, you realize just how deep the partisan divide has become. They're essentially saying they'd rather have the entire system shut down than compromise on specific ICE protocols. It's like refusing to pay for the gas in your house while your kids are freezing just because you don't like the utility company. You can see the passion in her delivery, but the practical implications are terrifying when you realize who actually suffers. It's not the politicians, it's the people waiting in those airport lines we just saw.
Today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet. Just the bifurcation, just the trend lines that we talked about on our first briefing. You see, this is not 2003. This is not endless nation building under those types of quagmires we saw under Bush or Obama. It's not even close. Our generation of soldier will not let that happen again, and nor will this president, who very clearly ran against those kinds of never-ending, nebulously scoped missions. Those days are dead. Instead, we're winning decisively with brutal efficiency.
This briefing from Pete Hegseth is probably the most aggressive military update we've seen in years. He's talking about brutal efficiency and refined intelligence, like it's a high-tech operation. You can tell he's trying to distance this conflict from the endless wars of the past. He specifically mentions that this isn't 2003 and there's no nation building involved. It's a pure flexing of muscles aimed at making the enemy hesitate. Look at the way he describes the trend lines. The U.S. is ramping up while the opposition's missile capability is supposedly dropping. It's a very confident stance, but it also raises the stakes for what happens next. The military personnel on the ground are clearly dialed in, and you can feel that intensity through the screen. It's a decisive shift in strategy that prioritizes winning quickly rather than staying indefinitely. Whether you agree with it or not, the sheer scale of the strikes he's describing is massive and suggests a very coordinated, high-level plan.
Where would you be if they sent up a supplemental, and did they give you any indication this morning that a supplemental is on its way to happen?
At this point, I am a hard no on a supplemental. This is not a war the American people want us to engage in. This is not a war supported by this country, and this is not a war that makes us safer. For the Trump administration to say over and over, there's no money for health care, there's no money for child care, there's no time to pay attention to how families are paying more, but there's $1 billion a day to go to the Middle East and drop bombs on Iran for military purposes that no one can describe and that no one can explain how merely from dropping bombs from the air we will accomplish those ends. No more money. The one thing Congress has the power to do is to stop actions like this.
Now, contrast that military confidence with this perspective. You've got a hard no on any additional funding because of the massive daily cost. Hearing the figure $1 billion a day is enough to make anyone do a double take. The argument being made here is that while we can't find money for healthcare or childcare, the power of the purse is suddenly wide open for overseas bombs. It's a classic domestic versus foreign policy clash. You can see the frustration in the delivery, the idea that the American people aren't being told the full scope of the mission. It's a powerful talking point, even if you think the military spending is necessary for safety. She's leaning heavily into the idea that this war doesn't actually make the average family safer. It's an interesting tactic to use the budget as a weapon to stop the strikes. This kind of debate is exactly why the Senate is at a total standstill right now, and it's why those TSA lines keep getting longer.
So here we are in the 26th day now of a government shutdown instigated by Democrats after they had agreed to the very bill that they are now opposing, and are now opposing even sitting down and talking and negotiating on the things they say they want. Explain that one. Mr. President, this is borderline obnoxious. This is indefensible, it is unjustifiable, and there are American people who are going to hurt as a result of this, and those already who work at these agencies, some 120,000 at one agency alone, that aren't going to get paid, who perform critical security missions for this country to keep the American people safe.
This floor speech is basically the boiling point of the whole situation. Using the word obnoxious to describe the other side's tactics is about as heated as it gets in the Senate. You can see the absolute disbelief on his face while he talks about 120,000 workers not getting paid for critical missions. It's a desperate plea for a vote that hasn't happened yet. He's highlighting the fact that they are on day 26 of a shutdown that was supposedly avoidable. It's wild because he's pointing out that the very people supposed to keep us safe are the ones being treated as political pawns. The urgency in his voice reflects the growing fear of another tragedy happening while the security apparatus is crippled. It really drives home the point that the system is broken when common sense and safety aren't the top priorities anymore. You can tell he knows the public is starting to lose patience with the snail-like pace of these negotiations, while the real-world consequences are piling up. The stakes have never been higher. Hit that follow button and let me know in the comments. Are we safe right now?